They didn't know I had ever run a surgical unit. They just saw a widow with nowhere to go. My husband died on a Tuesday. By Friday, my mother had already decided what my life would look like next. I remember standing in the kitchen of my parents' house, the house I grew up in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, holding a mug of coffee I hadn't asked for, watching her move around the counter like she was rearranging furniture in a room she owned, which technically she did. I had moved back 3 days after the funeral because I couldn't afford the apartment on my own. Our lease was in both names. Everything was in both names. There's a family, she said, not looking at me, over in Camp Hill. The father had a stroke. They need someone to stay with him during the day, help with medications, basic care. The pay isn't much, but it includes lunch. I looked at her. I'm a physician assistant, Mom. I don't do elder care. She set down her dish towel. You're also 31 years old with no income and your rent is due next week. She wasn't wrong. That was the part I hated most. My husband, I still can't say his name without my chest doing something strange, had been sick for 2 years before he died. Not dramatically sick, quietly sick. The kind of sick that drains savings accounts and maxes out credit cards and makes you take on extra shifts until you're running on 5 hours of sleep and protein bars. He had a degenerative nerve condition. We knew it would progress. We didn't know how fast. I had spent the last 8 months of his life working double shifts at the orthopedic clinic and coming home to help him with the things he could no longer do for himself. I was his caregiver and his wife at the same time, and I told myself I could hold both. I did hold both. But holding two things that heavy leaves marks. After he died, I had $847 in my checking account and approximately nothing in savings. The disability payments we had relied on stopped automatically. His life insurance policy, which we had taken out 2 years earlier, before the diagnosis, had a clause. Our attorney explained it to me in a voice so gentle I wanted to scream. The payout was reduced significantly because the policy term had been modified. It was legal. It was devastating. So yes, I moved back to my parents' house. I slept in my old bedroom with the faded blue curtains and listened to my father watch television downstairs until 11 o'clock every night. His name is Mr. Aldridge, my mother said. His daughter manages the household. She said you'd start Monday. She had already called. She had already set the schedule. She had not asked me. I went on Monday. The Aldridge house was a large colonial on a quiet street, the kind of neighborhood where people had American flags and clean gutters. A woman named Suzanne answered the door. She was maybe 50, well-dressed, the kind of composed that comes from money and practice. She looked at me the way people look at someone they've hired and immediately decided they'll have opinions about. You're the PA, she said. Yes, good. He's resistant sometimes, don't take it personally. He was a surgeon for 40 years and he doesn't enjoy being managed. I thought, that makes 2 of us. His name was Dr. Aldridge, Wallace Aldridge, and he was 78, post-stroke, left-side weakness, some expressive aphasia that came and went depending on his fatigue. When I walked into his room, he was sitting in a chair by the window with a newspaper folded open to the crossword. He looked up at me. Another one, he said. It came out slow but clear. I'm sorry? He set the paper down. Suzanne keeps hiring people who talk too much. I'll try to disappoint you, I said. He looked at me for a long moment, then something shifted in his face. Not quite a smile, but close. Sit down, he said. I sat. The days settled into a rhythm. I arrived at 8, handled his morning medications, helped with his physical therapy exercises, made sure he ate lunch, monitored his vitals, noted anything unusual. Suzanne left for work at 9 and came back around 6. In between, it was just me and Dr. Aldridge in the quiet house. He was difficult the way intelligent people are difficult. Not mean, just unwilling to pretend. He pushed back on things he didn't agree with. He asked questions that cut straight to the point. He watched people carefully. About 3 weeks in, he asked me something I hadn't expected. We were sitting in the sunroom after his exercises. He was tired, which made the aphasia slightly worse, but he was still working through it. You worked trauma, he said. It wasn't a question. I looked up from the chart I was updating. Pay program. Then orthopedic surgery. Why? The way you handled the compression this morning. You didn't hesitate. You knew the protocol before I could ask. That's just training, he said. That's instinct. Training gives you the steps. Instinct tells you which step matters. I didn't answer. I wrote something in the chart that didn't need to be written. What are you doing here? He asked. Caring for you, Dr. Aldridge. He made a small sound, not dismissive, just patient, like he was waiting for a better answer. I didn't give him one. Not that day. I had been at the house for about a month when my mother called, with a tone in her voice that I had learned, over 31 years, meant something I wasn't going to like. Your sister has a situation, she said. My sister is 4 years older than me. She has always been, by our family's reckoning, the responsible one. She bought a house at 27. She married well. She has 2 kids who play travel soccer. At family dinners, she gives advice about financial planning to people who didn't ask. What kind of situation? My mother paused. There's been a discrepancy with some paperwork. I sat up. What paperwork? You know how she helped you file the VA caregiver benefit after things got difficult with? She stopped herself. After things got difficult? Yes. She was listed as the secondary point of contact. For administrative purposes, Mom. What happened? Another pause. Longer this time. I had enrolled in the VA caregiver support program 18 months before my husband died. It provided a monthly stipend to family caregivers, in our case me, because I had reduced my work hours to care for him. It wasn't much, around $400 a month. But when you're down to one part-time income and a pile of medical bills, $1,400 is the difference between keeping the lights on and not. My sister had helped me with the initial paperwork. She was good with forms, she said. She wanted to help. What I found out that night, on the phone with my mother in my childhood bedroom with the faded blue curtains, was that approximately 8 months into the program, the deposit routing had been quietly changed, not to my account, to hers. I had never noticed, not fully. We had so many accounts by then, so many automatic transfers, so many things I was just trying to keep moving while I worked and cared for my husband and tried not to fall apart. I had seen the deposit amounts drop and assumed it was an administrative adjustment. I hadn't dug into it. I didn't have the energy to dig into anything. She had been receiving my VA stipend for 11 months. 11 months of a benefit meant for me, for my husband's care, deposited directly into her account, and she had said nothing. She's going to pay it back, my mother said quickly. She just needs some time to get it together. She didn't mean for it to go this long. She changed the routing number, Mom. Silence. That's not a mistake. That's not an accident. You change a routing number on purpose. She was going through things too. The soccer fees and the renovation, her kitchen renovation, I said slowly. She used my husband's caregiver benefit money for her kitchen renovation. My mother started saying something about family and forgiveness and how these things get complicated, and I set the phone down on the nightstand and just stared at the ceiling for a long time. 11 months, roughly $15,400, while I was working double shifts, while I was helping my husband to the bathroom, while I was calculating whether we could afford his next prescription. My sister had been depositing my benefit money and renovating her kitchen. I didn't sleep that night. I went into work the next morning running on coffee and something cold and specific that I didn't have a name for yet. Dr. Aldridge noticed immediately. He didn't say anything until after medications and exercises, when we were sitting in the sunroom with the morning light coming in at a low angle. Then he folded his crossword and looked at me. Something happened, he said. I'm fine. I didn't say you weren't. He paused, working through the words. I asked what happened. I shouldn't have told him. He was my patient. It was unprofessional. But I was exhausted in a way that had gone past the point where good judgment fully applied, and there was something about him, the directness, the lack of performance, that made lying feel pointless. I told him. Not everything, but the shape of it, the benefit, the sister, the 11 months. He listened without interrupting. When I finished, he was quiet for a moment. That's theft, he said. Yes. From a federal program, yes. Have you contacted the VA? I shook my head. My mother wants me to give her time to pay it back. He looked at me with an expression I couldn't quite categorize. Not pity, something more like recognition. Your mother wants you to protect your sister, he said. Yes, and you're considering it. I didn't answer. Because that's what you do, he said, not unkindly. You carry things. I looked out the window. The neighbor's dog was walking slow circles in the yard next door. I don't know what I'm doing, I said. It was the most honest thing I'd said to anyone in months. Yes, you do, he said. You just don't want to do it. The thing about doing the right thing is that it costs you something. People say it doesn't. They say the truth sets you free, and justice is its own reward. They have clearly never had to choose between doing the right thing and keeping their family intact. I called the VA. I did it from my car, parked outside a CVS on a Thursday afternoon. I explained the situation to a case manager named Doreen, who had the steady voice of someone who has heard many things, and remains unsurprised. She walked me through the process. There would be an investigation. The overpayments would need to be repaid to the program. If the routing change was found to be intentional, there could be additional consequences. Additional consequences meaning what? I asked. She paused. That's up to the investigators. I sat in the car for a while after I hung up. A woman walked past pushing a stroller. A guy in a red jacket came out of the CVS with a plastic bag. Normal things, the world just going. I called my mother and told her what I'd done. The silence on the other end was the loudest thing I'd heard since the day my husband died. You didn't have to do that, she finally said. She was going to pay it back. She had 11 months to say something. Mom, you're going to destroy her life over money. She took money that was supposed to help care for my dying husband. Another silence then. I think you should find somewhere else to stay. I sat with that. My childhood bedroom, the faded blue curtains, my father watching television downstairs. Okay, I said. Suzanne offered me the guest room before I even finished explaining the situation. I had come in the next morning, looking like someone who had slept in their car, because I had slept in my car, and she had taken one look at me and told me to sit down at the kitchen table. I told her the short version. She listened without the expressions people usually make. Then she said, the room above the garage is empty, it's small, the heating is loud, but it's private and it's yours as long as you need it. I started to say I couldn't. Consider it part of your compensation, she said. Dad does better with consistency. Changing caregivers would set him back. She stood up. I'll have the cleaning service go through it today. It was practical, maybe entirely practical, but I cried in the bathroom for 10 minutes after she left the kitchen, just because someone had been straightforwardly kind, and I hadn't known how much I needed it. The room was small, the heating was loud, I slept better than I had in a year. Dr. Aldridge got steadily better over the following weeks. His speech improved with therapy, his left hand was coming back. Not fully, but enough to manage a fork, to hold a pen, to write slowly. He started doing the crossword with a pen instead of asking me to fill things in. One afternoon I came in with his afternoon medications and found him at his desk, not the crossword but actual papers, charts, reading glasses on, his hand moving carefully across a page. What are you working on? I asked. Reviewing a case, he said. Old colleague asked for a consult. Remote. I set the medications down. Should you be doing that? He didn't look up, but I can. That's the more relevant point. I smiled. I didn't mean to, it just happened. He glanced up and caught it. Sit down, he said. Since you're here, I sat. Tell me about your program, he said. PE school, Ware Jefferson, in Philadelphia, good program. He went back to the page. What was your concentration? Surgical. I did my rotations in trauma and ortho, and then you left. My husband got sick. I needed to cut hours. The clinic job was more predictable. He was quiet for a moment. You're 31. Yes. The stroke was my second. I know I probably have a third somewhere ahead of me. He said it with the flat candor of someone who has already made his peace with it. Suzanne worries. She means well. But she worries. That's what people do when they love someone. He set down his pen. I was chief of surgery for 14 years, before the first stroke. 43 years of practice. He looked at his left hand, the one that was coming back slowly. The department sent flowers. Very nice arrangement. I waited. The program director called me last month, he said. They're launching a training initiative. Surgical skills instruction for advanced practice providers. PA students, NP students. 2-year curriculum, they need clinical advisors. I looked at him. I told him I knew someone, he said. Dr. Aldridge, you're not going to spend your career monitoring vitals for old men, he said. Not unkindly. With certainty. That's not what you're for. Something went strange in my chest. I haven't practiced surgical support in almost 3 years, I said. You haven't practiced, you haven't forgotten. Those are different. He picked up his pen again. I told him you'd call this week. You told him without asking me. He looked up with something very close to amusement. Would you have said yes if I asked? I opened my mouth, closed it. There's, he said. That's why I didn't ask. The VA investigation concluded 4 months after I filed. My sister had to repay the full $15,400 to the program. The investigation found that the routing change had been intentional and deliberate. The case was referred to the Department of Justice for possible federal charges related to misappropriation of VA benefits. I found out from a letter, not from my family. My mother didn't call, my father didn't call, my sister. I don't know what she was doing, I didn't ask. A former colleague from the clinic texted me. Heard things got complicated with your family. You okay? I wrote back, yeah, working through it, which was true. Working through is not the same as done, but it's something. Suzanne knocked on my door on a Saturday evening in October, which was unusual. She was holding a piece of paper. Her face had an expression I hadn't seen before, something careful and slightly formal. There's something I need to tell you, she said, and I want to say it properly. She came in and sat on the edge of the small chair by the window. The room was too small for more than one chair, and she held the paper in both hands. My father told me, she said, about 2 months ago, what you did with the VA, calling them, reporting it, even though it cost you your housing, your family. She paused. He doesn't usually talk to me about things like that. He is, I agreed. He also told me what he told you about the Jefferson program. She looked down at the paper. I want to be transparent with you. The position pays a stipend. It's not full salary. But I've talked to the director and given your background and the time commitment. I think there's a path to a full faculty role within 18 months. I sat very still. My father also asked me to give you this. She held out the paper. I took it. It was a letter, handwritten, on actual stationery. The handwriting was slow and slightly uneven from the left hand damage, but clear, deliberate. You carry things well, but you were not built to carry other people's wrongdoing. You were built to teach. I have seen it every morning for 5 months. The program is lucky to have someone who still knows the difference between training and instinct. Please stop waiting for permission. I read it twice. Then I folded it carefully and set it on my knee. He wrote that himself? I asked. With his left hand? He practiced for a week, Suzanne said. He didn't want anyone to transcribe it for him. I pressed my lips together. The heating system clicked on and made its loud mechanical noise. Outside the small window, the October trees were doing what October trees do. Tell him I said yes, I said. Suzanne smiled. The formal expression came down. Tell him yourself. He's still awake. I went down the stairs and across the yard in the cold and knocked on the back door of the main house. Suzanne had called ahead, because the lights were still on in the sunroom. He was in his chair, the crossword open on the side table, pen on top of it. He looked up when I came in. He nodded, once, like it was settled, like it had always been settled. Good, he said. Sit down. I sat. The sunroom was quiet. The clock on the mantel ticked. Outside, somewhere down the street, a car passed slow and then was gone. You're going to be very good at this, he said. I looked at the crossword on the table. 7 across, half filled. A word I could see the shape of from where I was sitting. How do you know? I asked. Because you already are, he said simply. You just spent 5 months teaching me to trust myself again, and you didn't even notice you were doing it. I didn't have an answer for that. I didn't try to find one. The clock ticked. The heating in the main house was quieter than the one above the garage. The room was warm. I had 847 and 6 months ago. I had a sister who took what wasn't hers, and parents who asked me to look away. I had a room above a garage and a debt I was still paying down, and a grief that still showed up without warning in the middle of ordinary things. And I had this, a lit room. An old surgeon who practiced his handwriting for a week so the words would be his. A path forward that no one could take from me because I had found it myself. That's not a small thing. I'm learning not to call it small.